Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. But it's such an interesting time, Christmas. And we're experiencing, I was talking to Reverend Cindy, it does feel like December is a time that many people are like, their soul or spirit is like, we're done. And we always feel like we're experiencing some of that, but it feels this year more the people who have are at the end of this human life. And what I'm aware of is that yesterday was the shortest day of the year. The solstice was last evening. There is this interesting dichotomy on the time when there is the least amount of light, and particularly for those of us in the northern hemisphere, and you think about where a lot of our traditions came from, pretty far north in Europe, it would have been quite dark and quite cold. And somebody got the idea, let's light more candles. Let's remind ourselves of a deeper truth, that even in this time of loss and grief, the light is still here, and the light will return. So I must have been thinking about that when I chose my title for today, In the Darkness a Light Shines Forth, which is almost identical to the title that I chose for Tuesday night, and I didn't realize I had done that. It's something about light and darkness. But that's what we're talking about these days. I promise the two messages will be different. But I have really been in this space of celebrating the music and the joy and the busyness for all of us who work here at Unity. We're busy. You heard all the different services we're doing. And I even told the staff this week, the busyness has a different quality to it. Because we only sing these songs once a year. We only do all of this, and I've got it done up in my house too. And I put up the Christmas tree and all the decorations. I didn't even think anybody was going to come to my house. Turns out I have had company. I did it for me. Because I just love the specialness of reminding myself of even when things around us are dying or going away, there is joy. There is peace, there is light, there is love. And before we get into the message too much, Peggy Ferndeberg's birthday is today, and she turns 89. Would you just wish Peggy a happy birthday? She's right there, 89 years. Stand up, let us just say you. We love you, Peggy. Longtime member, and her son Bill kind of informed me that was happening. Christmas is a time, the holidays are a time. I know we have some folks who are not Christian who celebrate Hanukkah and some of the other celebrations this time of year, but it is time for gathering families, and many of you who thought you got rid of your kids, they're back. I love this. My favorite thing about being a parent is being told I am wrong constantly by someone who depends on me for food, clothing, and shelter. Isn't that part of it? I don't know why I've been doing this lately, that I've been telling you my 3 points. I think it's just because I'm trying to hold on to so much in my mind, it'll help me stay on track. So here are my 3 points for my message today. First, I'm going to talk about the mystery of incarnation. And then the second is, we are not half and half. More on that in a moment. And my third point is, the light is where we are. Wherever we are, the light is there. I'd like to read the creation story from the New Testament. Do you know about this? Any Bible people out there probably know what I'm talking about. In the prologue to the Gospel of John, there's this beautiful cosmic telling of the creation. It goes like this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And in the King James, it's interpreted or translated as, the darkness comprehended it not. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and through the world was made, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize the light. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Beautiful language. I love that phrase, the Word made flesh. I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household, and the Word meant to us one thing, the Bible. And my mom would still ask me, son, are you abiding in the Word? And I know what she means. Are you reading your Bible? And then there's you want a Bible-based church, you want to be in the Word. And, I never questioned the fact that the way that English word, it's translated from the Greek logos, the way it's used in the first chapter of John is not talking about the King James or the New International Standard Bible. It's not talking about that. It's something else. The Gospel of John is considered to be the most metaphysical and mystical of the books in the Bible. There is a mystery here. Mystery is not just Nancy Drew and her pals finding out who did the thing. What we mean by mystery is something we're not going to get to the bottom of. We're just going to be in the experience of the knowing and the unknowing. God is mystery. I have a friend who, for many years, she did some work with a Jungian therapist and an analyst, and he told her, we need lots of images for God. There's not going to be a four-sentence paragraph said, this is what it is. Everything is contained in that. That's not what it is. The infinite good, the infinite life, it's all of these words I'm using are just pointing to something. And we need lots of images and lots of doorways for us to begin to open our consciousness wider and wider to understand that God is. God is ising right now. The presence, the power, the light, the love, the life, it's happening right now. The reason I decided to share this passage, I'm reading a book, I think I mentioned it last week. It's How to Speak God from Scratch by Jonathan Merritt. And he talks about this passage and this idea. He too comes from a fundamentalist background, and he talked about he had the same understanding of what the word meant in those circles that I did. And yet something different was being spoken about by the writer of this gospel 2,000 years ago. There are two potent symbols in that passage I just read, the Word and the light. Both of those are pointing to some truth about what we call the Christ experience, the incarnation, how the infinite divine is revealed in the here and now, in the human. It's big. And I'm not going to be able to give you a paragraph that you go, now I got that all figured out. It's a mystery. But the longer that I'm in our teaching of New Thought, of unity, where we value and honor the mystery and the metaphysics of it, that this is not something that we simply get once and then we have it and now we're checked off a list and now I get to go to the good place when I die instead of the other place. It's not that at all. It's a way of opening my consciousness and my experience to God now. Now, in this moment. And these two images are beginning to open that doorway for me in a way that I'm just getting new things all the time from it. I'm living in a deeper reality, embodied reality of what this thing is that we talk about called the Christ. The human revelation of the infinite divine. And most of us grew up who said there was only one, and even that passage says God's only Son. Meister Eckhart, the beautiful mystic from the 13th or 14th century, he was sentenced to death, but he died before they got to him in the Catholic Church as a heretic. But he said this, what is it? Do you know how it's, Stacy? The eternal, the eternal is forever begetting the only begotten. That's the mystery of the incarnation. That the eternal is forever begetting the only begotten. It didn't just come in Jesus of Nazareth. That may be the clearest exemplar or example we have of someone who knew that God's presence is within him, and he spoke these beautiful teachings. And according to those who witnessed it, performed miracles from this consciousness of the indwelling presence of God in him. But we already got this here. It says, in the beginning was the Word. Before Christmas, before Bethlehem, that all things were made through this Christ, this Spirit, this energy, this mystery. And in Jonathan Merritt's book, he introduced me to something that I had heard of this person, Erasmus, and he was a big philosopher and thinker in the Catholic Church in the 14th and 15th century. He was Dutch. But he wrote a different version of this passage, which I'd like to read to you now. This is, in the beginning was the Word, was the way it came to us from the Greek, but this is what Erasmus wrote in the early 1500s, so 16th century. It all arose out of a conversation with God. In fact, the conversation was God. So God started the discussion, and everything came out of this, and nothing happened without consultation. This was the life that was the light of men shining in the darkness, a darkness which neither understood nor quenched its creativity. The subject of the conversation, the original light, came into the world that had arisen out of its willingness to converse. He fleshed out the words, but the world did not understand. He came to those who knew the language, but they did not respond. Those who did became a new creation, his children. They read the signs, and they responded. These children were born out of a sharing in the creative activity of God. They heard the conversation still going on here, now, took part in discovering a new way of being people. To be invited to share in a conversation about the nature of life was for them a glorious opportunity that was not to be missed. Isn't that beautiful? In the beginning was the Word. Even when I knew it wasn't just talking about Jesus, I had like this eternal truth proclamation. God said this word. But it doesn't actually say that. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There are two parts of that. And Erasmus had this brilliant revelation in the 1500s that it's not a proclamation, it's a conversation. There is a give and a take. There is a movement. This is the mystery of incarnation, is that God needed to experience itself through human lifetimes, through having someone to talk to and talk back and listen and respond. This is the nature of the spiritual life. What if, just try this on. What if you saw every person in this room as the Word made flesh, as an incarnation of Spirit? Just look around. They look cuter now, don't they? There's a little more light shining around them. Isn't that beautiful? How would you change if you knew that every breath and every moment was a conversation with the divine? How would that be? Yes, even on the 59 freeway. I have been known to respond in less than spiritual ways. And if I did that to you, I apologize. the thing that I love about this word mystery is that it gives me space to discover more. When Father Richard Rohr was sort of mentoring Jonathan as he was just coming into this broader, deeper spirituality after he left fundamentalism, Father Richard said, God is a mystery. And Jonathan was I think I said this last week, but it's worth repeating. I know you all don't come every week. I know that. Jonathan was very disheartened by that because he said, I don't feel comfortable with the God I can't know. As a mystery. And Richard said, no. God is not unknowable. God is infinitely knowable. We're never going to get to the bottom of it. We're never going to get to the end of the good of God. In the book of Revelation, there is a scene that is depicted where the cherubim and the seraphim have gathered around a throne of God, and for eternity they keep rotating around, that at every turn they see something new to praise and describe about the infinite good and the infinite God. Symbolic language. It's trying to point us to this truth that beyond our ability to hold and put in a box and say, you come to our church, we're doing it right, not like those people over there. Beyond all of that, there is this life that is wanting to be lived in us, through us, as joy, as peace, as love, and faith. Thank you. I just looked, that's why I have the minister sit on the front row. Because when I go off on things that weren't in my notes and I didn't prepare, I go, and I mean to say, that conversation. And there is a conversation that happens every moment between our humanity and our divinity. So when my second point, we're now there. We're not half and half, which is not the stuff you put in your coffee. In Colossians, the writer of that letter says that, talking about Jesus, that in him all the fullness of the Godhead dwelt. And that passage has always intrigued me. And for years I thought that Jesus must be half and half human, half divine. And then it was only in metaphysics that I came to understand that, no, Jesus is fully human, fully divine. That's why we have this mystery of incarnation. Because otherwise, we're just like the old hymns we used to sing, just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away. That's that dualistic worldview that says this is just a vale of tears, it's a place of sorrow, it's where we come and we have a test. Either we're going to say the right prayer and get to heaven someday, or we're going to fail and we're going to go to hell for all eternity. I remember this was like the beginning of my awakening of leaving that old idea, because I thought, how could a loving creator create this system where 99.9% of every soul that has ever lived is going to be doomed to eternal punishment? That makes no sense. Even less than sense to my head, my heart couldn't believe it any longer. I couldn't believe it. I needed a deeper, bigger understanding. And so what I've come to see is that just like Jesus, we are fully divine and fully human. We have no trouble accepting that we're fully human, do we? I don't. I have a lot of experience and evidence for my humanity as being less than divine. My growth past this last few years of my spiritual journey has been to see, okay, it's like now I'm in my humanness, now I've got to get back to my divinity. Now I'm in my humanness, sorry about that on the freeway, now I'm going to get back to my divinity. But rather to see, even in my anger, fully human, fully divine. The divine is being welcomed, greeted, opened here too. It's big. It's growing me in a way that nothing else has. Because I used to still have this old thread on the old dualistic way of being. Well, one day I'm going to graduate from this human thing, and I'm just going to be divine all the time. Probably still in a body, but just looking a little better. Just maybe just a little shinier. I don't know, something. I've given up on that. And what I'm doing instead is blessing it all. Blessing it all. We are not half human, half divine. 1 Corinthians 1:27, God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound the strong. I am foolish and weak at times. Now, my humanity would like to just push that part away and just be on that strong and wise part of my experience. There's another passage in 2 Corinthians that says, my strength is made perfect in weakness. My grace is sufficient. I told Stacy I'm going to tell a story. I've told quite a few stories on myself, but this one I've had a little hesitance about. I'm not sure exactly why. I've been a part of this movement for 31 years. I started my therapeutic journey 10 years before that when I was 19. I have done a lot of work for a lot of years on healing, on claiming my wholeness, on recovering. I've done lots of 12-step recovery in there too. I've done a lot. And it's sometimes a little embarrassing that I have still been foolish and weak in the middle of all that. So I've waited 10 years before I tell this story, but I think now it's enough time. You won't judge me too much. A few years ago, longer than that, I had been advised to open an S-type corporation to save me a lot of taxes. And there was a friend of mine who had put me in touch with an accountant in New York, and they had a lawyer, actually, who set this all up, and I paid them some hundreds of dollars, and I became an S-type corporation. But they gave me no guidance on how this corporation I had just formed with a New York guy was supposed to pay taxes in Texas. And when it came time, they were silent. And I was lost and confused, and I was real busy, and I ignored it. And I didn't file a tax return that year because I didn't know how to do it. Or the next year. Or the next. You see where this is going. See, can you feel my embarrassment? It's beginning to radiate up my spine. Because I was well established in recovery and in this teaching at this point. But I was embarrassed, I was ashamed, and so I just let it go. I was talking to a therapist about it, full of shame. That was the first person I told about it, and he said, Michael, I was doing a number on myself. I was really just thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. What's wrong with me? And he said, Michael, nobody gets to be good at everything. He said, you're good at a lot of things. This is something you're not good at. A couple years later, I told my prayer partner about it. This big revelation. And she loved me anyway. And I think that was the key where I said, well, now I've spoken this to someone who I talk to every week, so I've got to actually do something about it. And there used to be a big company based here in Houston that helped people get out of trouble with the IRS. They were having all these ads. Some of you probably know who that is, but I don't remember the name of it. But I called them, and I signed up one of their people, and then the company went out of business and owed the IRS a lot of money. But I was able to find someone through that who would help me file the past year's taxes. And I thought they were going to negotiate all the interest and penalties away, and they didn't. So I ended up with the tax years filed, but with a huge bill, which I couldn't pay. And again, just shame, pain, like I can't believe I'm doing this. At this point, I'm already in ministerial school, but I'm beginning to attend to it. When I talked to the IRS, they said, do you have a rich relative? Truly, that's what they said. If you want the penalties and interest to stop accumulating, can you borrow money from someplace? Well, I did have a relative who was not rich, but was generous and kind, He asked one day, I was visiting him, and he just said, do you need, honestly, this is seriously what he said. He said, do you need any money for anything? And it felt like just an opening. So I told him what was going on, yet another place where I had to have a conversation I didn't really want to have. And he arranged for a loan, and I was able to pay it off and then pay him back. It was a long, long time to get through that. I'm happy to say now, I have an excellent accountant. I pay my taxes on time, and I'm happy to pay them. It hasn't been a problem for quite a few years. When I was telling my prayer partner about this, she said, Michael, this might be the last one. This might be the last story where you're keeping yourself small. What if this is the last place you're going to put all of your evidence for how you can't be really divine? I'm extrapolating now on what she said. And I took her up on that, and I began to just go, okay, what if I separated the story of my shameful behavior and negligence from the facts of what happened and just started taking care of it? And I did. Step by step, day by day, week by week, paycheck by paycheck. It got resolved. There are two conversations. We tell the truth of our human experience. I had already learned this in other places in my life. My recovery is all about that. The first step of the 12 is we admit it. We were powerless over alcohol, over gambling, over debt, over sex and love addiction, whatever it is. We admit that we can't do this, which then leads us to the next steps. I came to realize there's a power greater than us. And what we would say in unity, there's a power greater in us. And as we begin to have that first conversation about this is the truth of my human experience, with a lowercase t on that truth, but I've got to tell the truth about it. But then I turn my attention to the deeper conversation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And all that was created came through the Word. I mean, even in this situation, I don't know what yours is. I don't know if it's a money problem. I don't know if it's a love and sex problem. I don't know if it's a health problem. I don't know. I know you got one. Mary Morrissey used to always say this. I don't know what your biggest problem is, but I know you have one. And that's the place where the divine is seeking to be made more real in your life, right there. Not when you get over it, but in it. She used to always say this too. Stop telling God about your big problems and start telling your problems about your big God. This is the conversation where we stand in the truth of our human conditions and we tell the deeper truth. The Word made flesh. Infinite creativity and inspiration and love and light and possibility in me now. And it's going to inform us. It's going to transform us. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. That's what we're about. This is the conversation that wants to happen. Jesus said this. I still have a lot of Bible memorized in case you didn't know that. That was not on my notes either. John 16:33, Jesus says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Richard Rohr says that every time Jesus speaks in the Gospel of John, it is the cosmic Christ speaking. That same mind that was in Christ Jesus in us. So I'm going to read that again, and I want you to hear that. I have told you these things so that in the indwelling Christ you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take part. The indwelling Christ in you and you and you and me has overcome the world. This is our hope. Why does it matter that we say we're one with God, that in this non-dual path of following Jesus' teachings and the Christ path, why does it matter that we say that we're one with God? Because no matter where you are, no matter what's going on, God is right there. Right there. Right in the middle of your tax mess that I had, right in the middle of this health diagnosis that you don't know what's going on, right in the middle of your losing your beloved father. Whatever it is, God is right there. And not the distant God sitting on the throne judging you, but the indwelling presence of love and light and eternal beingness that is delivering you through it, changed, grown, healed, transformed, freer, lighter. Am I glowing yet? I feel like it a little bit. I'm not trying to be your exemplar, but I am paid to be the one that tells you the truth. And what I'm trying to tell you is that you're bigger than you know. That third point, the light is right here. Last week we did a little, remember the 3 Faces of God invocation? It was a little workshop. We're going to do another one of those now. At the end of our service each week, we pray the prayer for protection. And it's written by James Dillett Freeman, who is considered the poet laureate of unity. Some of his poetry was taken to the moon and is still there, I think. I mean, he's really an amazing writer. And Stacy and I were talking about the prayer. The way that we often pray it, it's still a little that second face of God. You know, the light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, the presence of God watches over me. It's still a little separate. So what I'd like to do is have you repeat after me. We're going to put it in first person. And then at the end of each of those statements, we're going to say, I am light. So you're going to try it? I feel like we need to stand. I don't know why, but let's do it as you're able. And I know I haven't memorized. I've been doing it every week for 30 years, but just want to make sure I don't mess it up. Repeat after me. The light of God surrounds me. I am light. The love of God enfolds me. I am love. The power of God protects me. I am power. The presence of God watches over me. I am presence. Wherever I am, God is. Thank you. You may be seated. Remember that. You're going to be tempted, probably even before you leave this service, to forget that you know that God is right where you are. You'll definitely be tempted driving home on the freeway to forget it. I was tempted yesterday when the Texans lost that game to forget that the light of God is right where I am. But I remembered, because I had to work on this talk for today. And I remembered. We're not telling you you will have no problems in this life. Exhibit A. What we are telling you is that you will be healed and transformed and loved into being the best version of you that you've known. Because right here and right here, God is. Pray with me now. God is here and all is well. The infinite creator of all that exists lives in me, lives through me, lives as me right now. That each of us is invited into this deeper conversation where indeed we do speak what is true, what needs attention in our human lives, and we remember the deepest truth, that the presence and power and infinite capacity for transformation of the infinite is here in me, as me, right now. So I speak my word for everyone in the sound of my voice, that whatever that problem is, whatever that place of stuckness, of frustration, of hopelessness is, that there is a greater truth surrounding it, seeking to be revealed through it right now And right now, the intuitive mind begins to spark. I could do this. I could call that person. I could have that conversation. And you begin to move, not from a place of hopelessness or frustration or despair, but from the light within, guiding our path day by day, hour by hour, thought by thought. And so we live in constant transformation and revelation that God is indeed here and all is indeed well. We give thanks that this is so, and so it is. Amen. You are beautiful right where you are. Something is seeking to be born through this very experience you're having of overcoming, of becoming more of who you already are in God. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. Thank you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.